Hey everyone, hope you're having an awesome day today. Thanks for tuning in to another vintage Poke openings video. And today I wanted to show you something that's actually really special to me. For those who come here exclusively for Pokemon content, I do apologize. There's only going to be a very small amount of vintage Pokemon in this video. Much of it is going to be showing off my vintage Yu-Gi-Oh collection from my childhood that I had graded by PSA. Now this ended up being the largest PSA submission that I ever had put in. It was about 40 some cards or so. Just gonna adjust the camera a bit here. And as you can see, I've got 2 stacks of Yu-Gi-Oh cards. Just to give you a little bit of background on my experience with Yu-Gi-Oh from my childhood. So I started collecting and playing Yu-Gi-Oh right from the get-go when the TCG released in America in 2002. I had all of the starter decks from that time period, and I collected basically through, I want to say around 2005. One of the last sets I remember collecting was like Rise of Destiny, Soul of the Duelist. I think I had one booster pack of Flaming Eternity from what I could see in like my childhood collection. I did have some cards from that set. So that was kind of about the time when I stopped collecting and I just grew out of Yu-Gi-Oh! But back in November of 2019, which is when I kind of got back into the Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG and started collecting again, I was going through my old cards and I told myself I really wanted to get my collection graded at some point. And after years of waiting for PSA to kind of come back down to worthwhile value TCG submission prices, I went ahead and submitted my collection for about $15 a card. I'm not going to show prices in this video because I don't intend on selling any of these cards. They're all just from my own collection. Now, this won't represent my entire childhood collection. Some of the cards that weren't maybe in the best shape but were still holos, if I felt like they weren't worth grading, I didn't go ahead and grade them. I think I had like a holo Mask of Dispel card that was pretty damaged, so as much as I like it and I kept it in my binder collection, I chose not to have it graded. And then also there are some cards that I had sold back in November of 2019 from my childhood collection that I didn't have graded. Some of those would be like, I had 2 starter deck Kaiba Blue Eyes White Dragons, I had 2 starter deck Joey Red Eyes Black Dragons, I had 2 Dark Magicians from starter deck Yugi. I had Solemn Judgment, which is an ultra rare holo from one of the first handful of sets. So I did sell some cards on eBay. That was kind of when I was just going to purge my collection. I didn't think I was going to get back into the hobby. And lo and behold, I did end up getting back into the hobby. So we're going to take a look at this PSA return here, and I did have just a couple Pokemon cards to show you. You might remember a few videos ago we opened a Blackout base set theme deck. I did get that Hitmonchan graded and actually got a very nice grade of 9, which I'm not that surprised about because if you look at like the holofoil and you take a look at the centering and the back side, I mean, it's a pretty darn... It's in pretty darn good shape. So would have been crazy to get the 10 because any base set PSA 10 holo goes for a lot of money, but I'm just gonna put that off to the side. Now this card here, this Holo Kabutops, we did not open this on the channel. I actually bought this single card off of eBay back in November of 2019, kind of when I was getting back into the hobby. And I bought this Holo Kabutops and a Holo Nidoqueen from the Jungle set from this guy on eBay who had said that he had pulled them freshly from a pack. And he had like a fossil and a jungle booster pack next to them, along with all of the commons and the uncommons that kind of made it look like, yeah, he did pull it pack fresh. Well, when I got the card, it wasn't in terrible shape, but it definitely wasn't pack fresh. As you can see, there's just a lot of wear and tear. Well, maybe you can't see, but there's just a lot of wear and tear on the edges, especially on the backside. And if you look real closely at the holofoil, you might not be able to see it through the casing here, but there you can kind of see there's like a fair amount of scratches on there. And don't get me wrong, it wasn't in bad shape and I don't think I overpaid for it terribly, but I know what a pack fresh holo looks like, and even though they can occasionally have wear and tear on the edges, this was excessive. So he clearly was, I'm not gonna call it a scam, but he clearly was dishonest about pulling them straight from a pack. I'm sure he had them for some time. And then this card is not a vintage card, but I had it graded anyway because this was pulled out of a, I don't even know what to call it really. It was a Pokemon box from 2014 that we found in my grandma's basement after she passed away. She had bought it for my cousins who are a good 15 years roughly younger than me, and this was kind of the era of Pokemon that they grew up in. She had bought it for them, and it had just sat in her basement, and she passed away, and we found it. And I took it, obviously, because no one else in the family wanted it. And I think the packs that were inside where there was like a Flash Fire pack, there was a couple XY base set packs, there was one more in there. I don't remember what it was, but I wasn't really interested in keeping the packs because I don't collect this era of Pokemon cards. So I sold them on eBay, but I did have this promo card that was included in it, graded, and I was shocked to see that it got a 4. And once again, I don't collect these cards, like this generation of cards, so maybe there was some reason that it got a 4, but I mean the backside's not terrible. I mean, it does have a little whitening here and there, but I guess the front side must have been pretty scratched up or something, because I don't know how this got a 4. I mean, it was quote unquote pack fresh. I pulled it right out of the box, so unless it had been damaged in the box somehow, not really sure how it got a 4. Not saying it should have been a 10 or a 9 or even an 8, but a 4 seemed a little bit low for that card. So those were the Pokemon cards. I'm going to go through these Yu-Gi-Oh cards. I'm going to try not to spend too much time on them just so this video doesn't take forever, but I will just show you some of the cards. So this Blade Knight card was one of the more interesting cards that I had graded, not because of the monster itself. Blade Knight was a holographic card that not only came in one of the sets, but also you could get as a limited edition holo out of the 2004 Yu-Gi-Oh tins. So every year in Yu-Gi-Oh, at least when I was collecting, they had like a new series of tins that came out. Like in 2002, they had a series of tins, and those tins would have like 5 or 6 booster packs and a limited edition holo. They did the same thing in 2003. They did the same thing in 2004, and I'm assuming they continued that trend for a while. Well, one of the 2004 tins that either myself or my brother had included this Blade Knight holo, and I got a really nice PSA 9 score, which is pretty impressive considering this has just been in a binder for who knows how long. But it came with this designation of incorrect foil error, which I didn't know what that was. I wasn't aware of any kind of error cards in these tins. So I did some research on it, and I don't think it's anything super special. I think this is an error that has been known for a long time by Yu-Gi-Oh collectors, but PSA just started recognizing it, because when I looked at the PSA appraisal list, it was listed as part of this 2004 tin set, but it had absolutely no sales. It said 0 in terms of like the population. So we'll continue on. This is the holographic card, the premier holo card that came with Starter Deck Pegasus in 2003, relinquished. This was kind of a core piece of Pegasus's deck, and I had 2 of these. I just had this one graded because I felt like it was the best condition, and it got a PSA 8, so not going to complain if any of these cards get an 8 or higher, because like I said, these were part of my brother and I's childhood collection. So next we have Holographic Thien and the Great Sphinx from 2004, and this came, I believe, as part of a pack that you received if you went to go see the Yu-Gi-Oh movie. I think it was called Pyramid of Light or something like that. I could be wrong, but I seem to remember getting this from a pack we got at a movie, so kind of a cool holo there, and I got a PSA 9. Next, from 2003, we have a holographic Mask of the Accursed. And the Labyrinth of Nightmare set that you see here, there were a lot of different mask cards in the set. I think I told you I had a holographic Mask of Dispel. I believe that was in this same set as well. So these mask cards are some of my favorite Magic cards in all of the vintage Yu-Gi-Oh sets, to be honest. They're just really cool artworks. And they were used a lot in the TV show, which I watched every Saturday when I was a kid. So anytime you pulled a card from the TV show, it was extra special. This Ultimate Rare Chain Burst card here is one of the first edition cards graded from this set. And this was from the Rise of Destiny, one of the last sets that I collected, as you can see there, in 2004. This one only got a 7, which I'm not surprised, because if you kind of look in the upper right and left-hand corners, it's a little chewed up. But it's still a very cool artwork. Not exactly one of the more sought-after cards in the set, but just a really cool artwork. Next, I have a holographic promo card here called Negate Attack, and this was one of 3 promos that you could get from a Game Boy Advance game called The Sacred Cards. Very fun Game Boy Advance game, and it basically mirrored the 2nd season of the Yu-Gi-Oh! TV show. So that whole story arc with Merrick and Odeon and all of that, the Battle City tournament, that's what that Game Boy game covered, and it was just a blast to play. So that was one of the 3 holos that I got when I got that Game Boy game, Game Boy Advance game. So you'll see a couple more holos from that set in a little bit. This card got a PSA 9 2004 from the Soul of Duelist set. Again, one of the last sets that I collected. Armed Dragon level 7. It was one of the better cards from that set, if I remember. There's one tier higher than this called Armed Dragon level 9. I think that's the more sought after card, but that one is very cool nonetheless. Now this next card is special to me for a number of reasons. So first and foremost, it's the only holo Japanese Yu-Gi-Oh card that I have, and it's Kunai with Chain. This was a card that was used a lot in the early episodes of the TV show. I want to say Joey had it in his deck, and I don't think it was released in English. At some point it probably was, but I don't remember it being in any of those first sets. I know it wasn't in Joey's theme deck. But ultimately, I won this card from my cousin Nick way back in the day because I beat him in a duel. He was much older than me, and my cousins and I, we would play Yu-Gi-Oh! The card game quite a bit, and we kind of played it like they did in the Battle City tournament, where if you lost, you had to give up your rarest card. And that was not my cousin's rarest card, but he just gave it to me as kind of a consolation prize, so that was cool to have graded. Invasion of Chaos is one of my favorite sets from those original vintage Yu-Gi-Oh sets, and for some reason I had like a lot of first edition holos from that set, so I never paid attention to if the sets were first edition or not when I would grab a pack off the shelf, so it must have been dumb luck, but this was one of the holos I pulled from that set. It's a super rare called DD Scout Plane, got a PSA 7. Next, we have Dark Master Zork, and I do believe this card is supposed to be a representation of really the final antagonist of the Yu-Gi-Oh! TV show, which was Zork. He kind of was paired up with Bakura, and so this came out of the Dark Crisis set from 2003, got a PSA 8. It's a ritual card with a really cool artwork, so I wanted to have that graded. From the Labyrinth of Nightmare set, another card, we have Card of Safe Return. This is an ultimate rare that got a PSA 8. I do believe this is one of the more sought after cards from that set, so I really wanted to have this graded just to have it kind of immortalized in my collection. Now this first edition Kaiser Seahorse that I had graded, this was a card that I had 2 of, because for whatever reason, we must have had 2 different Kaiba Evolution starter decks. But it's weird because I only had 1 first edition Blue Eyes White Dragon. So I don't know where the second Blue Eyes White Dragon went because I know I don't have it. Perhaps my brother does, but this was one of the holos from that starter deck from 2004. And I wanted to at least get one of the 2 graded. Just like how we had that promo holographic card, Blade Knight from the 2004 tins, another one of those is this Total Defense Shogun. This was also a card that was included in one of the sets, but this is the limited edition holo from the 2004 tin series. So Blade Knight, Total Defense Shogun. I don't remember all of those other holos from those tins, but a lot of cool ones there. Now, this is one of 2 cards in this batch that really frustrated me. So this Axe of Despair is along with another card you're gonna see here in a little bit. They graded as a reprint. Like you can see here, it says 2010 Axe of Despair Spell Ruler. How is it Spell Ruler when you can see down here the MRL says Magic Ruler? Sorry, let me back up. So MRL stands for Magic Ruler, and that is what they initially called one of the first sets of Yu-Gi-Oh! Before they were brought into a lawsuit by Magic the Gathering and had to change the name of the set to Spell Ruler. Now, I don't know what about this card made them think that it was from 2010, because the entire rest of the batch I submitted to them was all from 2002 to 2004, and I know personally I collected no Yu-Gi-Oh cards after 2005. So I was kind of frustrated to see PSA grade this that way. I'm pretty sure if it was the reprinted set, which is called Spell Ruler, it shows like SRL down here instead of MRL. I could be wrong on that, but I was really frustrated. Unfortunately, I don't think it's worth sending it back into PSA to have regraded, because I do think I would get charged a second time. And really, I just wanted the cards kind of encased for my collection going forward, but really frustrated about that. We're going to see another one of those cards here in a little bit. One of the first sets of Yu-Gi-Oh! Was Pharaoh's Servant. This is a super rare holo from that set, limiter removal. This was also used in one of the episodes of the anime. I can't remember who used it in specific, but it might have been Joey again. I could be wrong on that, but that was one of my favorite cards from some of my early sets. Gearfried the Iron Knight. So this is a holographic from a tin from 2003. So we saw some holos from 2004. This is a holographic from 2003. Kind of a cool one. I think that was part of Kaiba's deck. These next couple cards I'll show you really quick, but I've already shown them in a previous video. We've got Dark Magician Girl from 2005 holographic. That came out of a Rise of Destiny special edition box. A PSA 6 Twin-Headed Thunder Dragon from Metal Raiders. And then we also have a PSA 9 Legend of Blue Eyes White Dragon Holo Mystical Elf. So I've shown those in a previous video, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time on those. Same with these next couple cards here. We've got a PSA 9 First Edition Creator. This was from Rise of Destiny as well, which actually I just noticed they didn't put that on the label. Okay. This card right here was one of my favorite cards from my Aqua deck. Levia Dragon Daedalus, Ultimate Rare, or Ultra Rare, excuse me, First Edition. One of my favorite cards. And then here's that Blue Eyes White Dragon I was talking about earlier from the Kaiba Evolution starter deck. So sorry I didn't realize those last 6 cards or so were in this batch, because I've shown those on a video before already. So I'm going to go ahead and move these out of the way. And we'll continue on with the next stack. One of the chase cards from the Legacy of Darkness set right here, Air Knight Parsath. This is an ultra rare. Got a PSA 8, which I was kind of surprised about because I thought this one had like a dog ear on one of the corners, but maybe I'm thinking of Dark Necrophere. I know one of these did. One of the ultra rares from the Pharaonic Guardian set was holographic Yugioh Richie. I actually saw a first edition version of this card at this card shop near me here locally. Just a couple weekends ago, I was considering actually buying it and getting it graded before I sent in this batch, but I never did. Now this might be my favorite card from this set. It's a PSA 9 Magic card from 2002 called Exchange, and this came from another Game Boy Advance game that I have called the Eternal Duelist Soul. And I don't know why I like it so much. I just think the holofoil and the artwork is so cool, and I remember that this card was used in the final battle between Merrick and Yugi in the Battle City tournament up on the blimp, and I just really appreciate that card. I think it's really cool. From that same Game Boy Advance game, we've got the Skull Dice holo card. So that's pretty cool. That got an 8. One of the core pieces of my Aqua deck that I ran back in the day is this Pharaoh's Servant holographic ultra rare legendary fisherman. This I did not pull out of a booster pack. My cousin, who knew that this was one of my favorite monster cards, actually got this for me off eBay way back when we were little kids. I thought that was a nice gesture, so I'll always be hanging on to that one. We've got a super rare holo here from Labyrinth of Nightmare called Kaiku the Ghost Destroyer. I pulled that one from a booster pack, I know. Another core piece of my Aqua deck back in the day was this Suijin holographic. I didn't have any other components of Gate Guardian other than Suijin, and I was kind of disappointed in this grade, getting a 5. I don't really know. I guess, I don't know. I guess there is some kind of wear and tear at the top of that card, so maybe it's justified, but this card I did not pull out of a booster pack. I remember when I was a little kid, I intentionally got this card off of eBay because I wanted it so bad. So that, along with Legendary Fisherman and Levia Dragon Daedalus, those were some of the kind of heavy hitters in my water deck. And then from the Yu-Gi Evolution starter deck in 2004, we have this Black Luster Ritual holographic. Of course, this is the card that's used to summon the Black Luster Soldier. This is the only holo Yu-Gi-Oh card I pulled on this channel to date. It's a super rare from the Rise of Destiny set called Divine Wrath. As you can see, it got a PSA 9, which didn't surprise me because it was a pack fresh card. Would have been cool to get a 10, but can't always have that happen. Next, we have Heavy Storm from the Metal Raiders set. This was actually one of the cards that I did have duplicates of. I had two holo super rares from Metal Raiders. They were both Heavy Storm. Had this one graded because I felt like it was the better of the two, and it got an 8. Next up, we have Delinquent Duo from the Magic Ruler set. See, now, this one, you can clearly see still says MRL, and they graded it appropriately from Magic Ruler. And they only gave it a 4, which I was unsure about, but I don't know why they graded Acts of Despair as a 2010 reprint. That just made no sense. There's no difference between this and Magic Ruler. So I'll be honest, there was a lot of things about this submission that disappointed me with PSA. I don't know if they had someone newer working on the grading, but you'd kind of think if the entire batch is all cards from 2002 to 2004, why would I just slip in a random reprint? But here we have a first edition holo Statue of the Wicked from Pharaonic Guardian, excuse me. I keep calling it Pharaonic Garden. This is a super rare first edition. Another one of the holos that came with that Game Boy game, the Eternal Duelist Soul, Graceful Dice. I think this is a really cool card. This is kind of the converse to the Skull Dice card. Now this one, I'm kind of surprised got an 8 because if you look right to the right of my thumb, let me get it in focus, there's kind of a bad little lip on the card, or like a ding or whatever you want to call it, but they still gave it an 8. So that was cool. Now from the Magician Force set, which is a very popular vintage Yu-Gi-Oh set, we have a holographic unlimited Paladin of White Dragon. This got a PSA 8. This is one of my favorite ritual cards. It's got such a cool artwork. Or ritual monsters, I should say. Now this is one of the last cards that I ever, or one of the last sets that I ever collected. You can see here it's the Vampire Genesis Holo First Edition. This was from 2005. This was about the time that I started to get out of Yu-Gi-Oh! So this might have been the last holo I ever pulled. Now this polymerization holo from Legend of Blue Eyes White Dragon, this one really irritated me because they also flagged this as a 2010 reprint. And once again, I pulled this straight from a pack. I know that for a fact because I never collected Yu-Gi-Oh! After 2005. So not only with that holo Acts of Despair card, but also this holo polymerization card got flagged as a reprint. And I have no idea why. I personally don't even know how to tell the difference between a reprint and a regular, but I can tell you that this was not. So once again, probably not worth having regraded, but frustrating nonetheless. This was a PSA 7 holographic Dark Necrophere. This was a core piece of Bakura's deck during the Battle City tournament and one of my all-time favorite monsters. I think it's such a cool card. Kind of fortunate to get a 7 on this because the border, or I should say the centering on the front is awful. And on the back, it's awful. And if you look kind of in the upper right-hand corner here, let me get this in focus. There's like some whitening and I don't know, not in the best condition, but still one of my favorite cards. I'm happy to have that. Continuing on with those holos from my Sacred Cards, Game Boy Advance game, we have a PSA 9 Perfectly Ultimate Great Moth, and I was shocked that this got a PSA 9. Because I have had this card since 2003. I played with this card with my brother. So it just goes to show you that we took much better care of our Yu-Gi-Oh cards than our Pokemon cards. And I think that was largely because we were just older when we started getting these Yu-Gi-Oh cards. So one of the super rares from Pharaoh's Servant, we have a PSA 8 holo Parasite. This was used in that Bug Duelists deck from kind of the first season of Yu-Gi-Oh! I think his name was... It wasn't Bugsy, that's Pokemon. Or maybe it was Bugsy and I just don't remember. Anyway, the centering in the back's pretty bad, as well as the front, but it got an 8. Continuing on with the holos from that Sacred Cards game, we have another one here. It's a holo magic card called Ryoku. This one got an 8. Getting to the end of the list here, we have a PSA 8 super rare called Tribe Infecting Virus from Magician Force. We have another holo from that Kaiba Evolution starter deck. You've seen a few cards from that in this batch. First edition PSA 8 Shadow Spell. This card was used in the anime a fair amount, I know. And then one of my favorite cards to polish it off, and just an all-time fan favorite with a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh collectors, Black Luster Soldier. This one is also from that starter deck Yu-Gi Evolution starter deck, and it got a PSA 8. So those are all, almost all of my childhood Yu-Gi-Oh cards. I had them graded by PSA, and I just wanted to share them with you folks because I haven't done a video in a while, and I always like showing off what my collection is, and I like seeing what other people had in their collection as kids. So thanks again for tuning into this video, especially if you made it to the end. I appreciate all of the support. If you're not currently subscribed, I would greatly appreciate it. Any kind of like or comment or any support you can give to the channel is always appreciated. So I hope you all have an amazing day and take care.